Me right now with their take on the first glimpse into President-elect Trump's administration, former White House Chief of Staff under President Clinton, Mack McLarty, along with former White House Chief of Staff under President George W. Bush, Josh Bolten. Gentlemen, good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
So, Mack McLarty, what about that? First off, what's your sense of having these two positions? They're equal, not a hierarchy here. Steve Bannon and Reince Priebus, very different. One is establishment Republican, Reince Priebus is. Steve Bannon, much more conservative. They're calling him alt-right. What's your take on these two men working together?
It's somewhat unusual structure. President Reagan had a similar structure with James A. Baker and with Edwin Meese, who had been his counselor, Reagan's counselor in California. So it's somewhat unusual, but not unprecedented. It is fairly common for a political operative to come in the White House with the elected president. We saw that with Karl Rove. We saw that with Paul Begala with President Clinton. We saw it with David Axelrod with President Obama. I think the difference is Reince Priebus has been chairman of the Republican Party, so how well he can work with Democrats is a question mark, although he has some relationships there, and I think he's a solid choice. I think he's a fine person. He's demonstrated a real capability as chairman of the Republican Party and an ability to work with Donald Trump and Steve Bannon. That's key. Mr. Bannon, I do not know, hesitant to judge someone I don't know, had a naval career, serviced our country, successful investor. But Breitbart does give me a real pause about sometimes they're going well beyond accepted norms and frankly expressing viewpoints that are just not consistent with my values and I think many Americans as well.
Josh Bolten, what about that? And on the one hand, you look at it and you say, okay, well, that means two groups will be served, right? The extreme all the way to the right as well as the establishment. On the other hand, we know what happens in business and co-CEOs never work.
Yeah, Maria, I agree with that. Co-CEOs is a problem. There's nothing wrong with a diversity of opinions in the White House and perspectives, and Donald Trump got elected with a pretty broad coalition of perspectives and views around the country. So all of that needs to be reflected in the White House. But I think the White House runs well only if there is one chief of staff clearly in charge. So my advice to any incoming president would be make sure there's a diversity of views, that you hear all the different opinions, especially the views that brought you there in the first place, but empower only one chief of staff.
So both of you served as White House chiefs of staffs under President Bush and Clinton. What is the relationship and the importance? Talk to us about the chief of staff and what the next 200 days look like going into 17. What would be the priorities from your standpoint, Josh?
Well, first of all, the chief of staff's job is one of the best jobs in America, but you got a lot to do. The overarching goal is to make the president the best president he can possibly be. Underneath that, you have to do a lot of things, and this is why I say that really you can only have one chief of staff. But you have to make sure that the presidential decisions make their way to the president in a way that the president can make a good decision and everything else is kept away from him. You've got to control the president's calendar so that the people who need to see the president get to see him, but the thousands more who want to see him don't.
Right.
You've got to run the staff effectively, and most important, you've got to keep the strategic direction of the White House and the administration focused on the priorities that got him elected.
What about that, Mack? Yeah.
That's going to be key for this president.
I think Chief Bolten gave a splendid tutorial on chief of staff position and his or her responsibilities. I would only add a couple of things. Number one, it's been called the chief javelin catcher job, so it was a privilege and is a privilege to serve as chief of staff, but it's a demanding job, make no mistake about that. Secondly, Maria, I would add to what Josh said, you've got to have a compatibility and trust with the president, and I do think the fact that Reince Priebus has worked with candidate Donald Trump as well as Steve Bannon and others is a real plus for him going in. Thirdly, the first 100 days are always important. They're particularly important, I think, in a President Trump administration. He's got to move forward to try to reassure the country and to unite the country. His chief of staff will play an absolutely key role in his achieving that or not.
Yeah, it would be nice if the leadership, like, for example, Harry Reid, would try to get on board and not say things that fire people up, like the protesters, like he's doing right now.
That may be a step too far. We'll see.
Yeah.
Mack McLarty, Josh Bolten, good to see you both, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.